Welcome to Heart in Hand, the Rangers podcast that... Wait a minute, I'm not David Edgar. Good evening, folks. During the international week that seemingly lasts 12 days, I was right, I'm not David Edgar. My name is Ian Hogg, and tonight in a spectacular role reversal, a bit like the tent scene in Brokeback Mountain, I'll be your host. Our special guest tonight to explore Heart in Hand as a podcast from Inception to now to the What Happens Next. It's a very good evening to David Edgar.
I bet they weren't expecting that one, were they? That's a bit of a left field. That's like a Pedro appointment of a start to a podcast, Ian.
Aye, get the assistant manager in.
Yes, well, a new spot opened up when Scott wasn't allowed out to play anymore. So you've seamlessly filled the void, so to speak.
Hoggy's gone all Graham Murty.
Yes, exactly. So it's a kind of weird position for me to be in. Actually, I feel a bit discombobulated because all my usual pre-match routine goes out the window when I'm the other side of the microphone, so to speak. So I don't really know what to expect. And for the listeners, if it's going to sound unusual to you, it's going to be very unusual for me, and I dare say for Ian as well. So it's going to be. It should be interesting. If nothing else, it should be interesting.
Let's go for it. So as I say, tonight we're going to explore Heart in Hand as a podcast. David, I'll fire some questions. You don't know what they are, which is good, and we'll see where it takes us.
Yes, it could be a 7-minute podcast.
Indeed, or a 7-hour. You never know. So away back in 2010, you finished your role with the Rangers Supporters Trust, and the first pod was spawned, still available on iTunes, and it aired on the 4th of August. And here we are, 7+ years later, and the pod continues to evolve. So really, really simple one to start with. Why on earth did you start it?
I'd been looking to step down from the trust for a while. As I was talking about in the last pod, in the middle of 2009, actually, I had a complete sort of change of lifestyle and whatnot, and one of the things that I felt I needed to do was get that was a very stressful position, and I thought that it would be better for me personally to step down. But at the time, the guys at the rest of the board at the trust were like, please don't do this, or please don't do this now. And I think when they saw that I was kind of quite determined, because I was burnt out, I was done. And I think that when they saw that, they realised, it's probably, we really should let him go, kind of thing. So I agreed to stay on for another year and step down at the end of that season, and that's what I did. And at the time, I had a plan to write a book, which I did. The very excellent and still available, and you can now get on your Kindle, 21st Century Blue, Being a Bear in the Modern World. And I had plans to do that, so I did that. I remember I took 6 weeks over the summer, and I wrote full time, so Monday to Friday, and I wrote the book, and the publisher liked it and all of that kind of thing. And then around about the time that for entertainment, I'd sort of discovered podcasts the year before, in 2009, when no longer going to the pub every night, I had to find other ways to fill my time. And I really liked this particular one that Alan Davis did, with a couple of friends about Arsenal, and from that, actually, in the kind of you might also like this, there was another one called The Spurs Show with Phil Cornwell, who a lot of people might know as he was the impressionist in Stella Street, and he's appeared in a lot of stuff with Alan Partridge and various other things, a comedian from London. And I really liked both of them, even though I wasn't a fan of obviously either Arsenal or Tottenham. So I remember saying to my friend Robbie, I was like, I wish somebody would do something like this for Rangers. And he said, will you do it? And I said, oh, no, I wouldn't know what to do. He said, well, how hard can it be? Famous last words. And I emailed the production company at Playback Media, because I figured they would know what to do. And they came back to me, and I said, look, my name's David Edgar, I've been the Supporters Trust spoke for 5 years. Here's me. I think I'm pretty confident in front of a microphone. I've got an idea for a show. and they said, right, okay, let's do a pilot and we'll see if there's any interest in it. And that was the beginning.
And from that, I guess there was some very visible, very vocal attacks on yourself towards the kind of latter years in the Rangers Supporters Trust. Any concerns going into the pod to begin with about that?
No, because when I was in the trust, I had to, I wouldn't say watch what I was saying, because, you know, anyone who remembers me from back then would know that I probably didn't do it as much. But I did, in terms of the kind of thing I said and the kind of way I presented myself, which was very serious and quite po-faced. And I wanted to do something that was more about fun, you know, was funnier, and something that sort of explained what it was like to be a Rangers fan. And that was the whole point of the book as well. And because the experience that I saw portrayed in the media and had fought against in the media wasn't what it was like to be a Rangers fan. And then I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to do this, and it's not going to be fire and brimstone, and it's not going to be deadly serious and very po-faced. I wanted to do something that was like the conversations I had with my mates. And when I sat down to think about what I would do in the show, that was it. There it was. I'll have conversations with my mates, and that was the only real rule that I had in place with it, because I knew that I found them funny, and I knew that if I found them funny, other people might. But even if they didn't, fine, I'd have done a show that I liked, and we would put it out for a few weeks, and if nobody was listening, fine, we would wrap it. But no, I wasn't really concerned with people having a go at me, because having a go at me personally never really bothered me. I always was more worried about the effect that it had on the trust as an organisation, because at the end of the day, if some stranger is calling you a wanker, he knows who you are and you don't know who he is, so fuck him. And that was always my it's maybe one of the benefits of being quite arrogant, is that it never really bothered me that much. But I say that the volume of them towards the end did start to get me down, and the kind of. But I figured that we would be able to make it more light-hearted, that I wouldn't have to answer to anybody, which was another big thing about it, and that I could set the tone for it, and it could be what I wanted it to be. And it was very much on the principle of this operates on an audience of one, which is, does this entertain me? And then a slightly extended audience of, does this entertain my mates? So there was always a risk it could be quite self-indulgent, I understand that, and at times I think it has been, but I always thought that people would get in on the jokes, because they weren't, I think, particularly hard to break down, you know. So I thought what would happen is, if people like this, then they can maybe feel a part of the community, because the whole thing is based on the community and being Rangers supporters. So I mean, I understood there would be people. There are people out there who hear my name and just instinctively recoil, and a lot of that's to do with my time in the trust, and there's nothing I can do about it. So I figured, fine, they don't need to listen to it. And it's not like when I was doing the trust, when you couldn't really escape me some weeks, and I do understand how that pissed people off. It would, you know, if I hadn't been me, I would have pissed me off. So I figured that to listen to this, you have to go out your way. You have to go find it and download it. It's not like it's going to be, you know, pushed down your ears sort of thing. So I figured that those who really didn't want to hear it wouldn't hear it. And again, there was never any desire to be nasty or settle old scores. And I think it's one thing, if you listen up until really, I would maybe occasionally mention something that happened in the trust, but it was never about, this is my time in the trust and this is what happened and this is what I think, sort of thing. And that's why the format was weekly and based on what was happening, and we didn't tend to go back and, you know, fight old battles or anything like that. So yeah, I knew there would be people who would be, you know, he's a prick, but I could live with that.
Fair enough. So in those early days, you said, you know, you sat down, you wrote an outline of what it was you wanted.
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. That's far too professional for me. And you've been in this pod long enough, but to explain to listeners, no, I came up with it. I came up with an outline,
Fair enough.
But it was all in my head, and still is to this day. Just in case I get hit by a bus, because then it means one of you can't just take over. I figure if I write it down, Cammy will try and bump me off to get the spot. So it's like The Godfather. He had all the connections to the judges, and he wouldn't tell anyone what it was. And if he got bumped off, the Corleone family lost all their influence. Well, it's just the same with this. As I say, to prevent any kind of Bell-led coup d'etats.
Which is perfectly reasonable. In those early days, in your head or whatever the hell it was, I've been on the pod. I know the agenda can be short,
limited,
fluid, non-existent.
One text message of 2 bullet points generally. Yeah,
pretty much. And in the early days, almost pre-decent Skype and all the rest of it, it was round a table, it was face to face, it was somebody's front room.
Yeah.
How did you go about in those really early days setting direction, setting content? I'm thinking of things like, it evolved really, really quickly into sport and integrity sections, into Spears of the Week, into who the fuck is Gigi Bacali, that type of stuff. How did that all come about in the early days?
I think a mixture of influences, as in things I was listening to, because obviously you've got Guardian, Football Weekly, and you had the Times podcast, and you also had the whole playback media empire, because apart from the Arsenal and the Spurs ones, they had West Ham and Liverpool, Man United. They had various club ones. So I listened to a few of them to see kind of what they did. And I remember actually at the time that they told me we don't do sections, and I said, well, I want to do sections. And we don't always do it now because, as you say, it's kind of evolved. We won't do sections in this tonight, for example. But I said to them, no, I want to do it in sections, as in, the game, a topic, and then, the daft bit at the end sort of thing. And that really just came up as an idea one day of just, we should do, we called it Spears of the Week for obvious reasons. And we just, look round and and see who's made an ass of themselves, because there's always somebody in football. There's always a funny story we can refer to, and over the years Scott took that and ran with it, and kind of it became his thing, and he was very good at it. But yeah, there was no real plan other than I knew somebody had to be in charge. I'm a great believer in that with any creative enterprise, be it a band or a show or a television, it doesn't matter, but somebody has to have the final say on everything. So from the start, it was always going to be, this is what I want to do, and I'll would listen to people's suggestion, and that includes the production company, but because I'm not totally dogmatic about it, and I'm not ever going to say that it can't be improved or it can't be better, so I'll always listen to ideas. But at the end of the day, if I said we're doing this, then that's what we were doing. So long as I knew roughly what the structure I wanted was, I could then work round that. And as you say, it started to evolve quite quickly. Certain things we would try and they wouldn't really work, so we would drop them. And other things we tried and they did work, so they would stay. But a lot of it was just natural, and that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be a conversation. And I think if you listen to the first few ones now, it's amazing how similar they are to the later ones. They're a wee bit more stilted in places, and you can hear us finding our voice kind of thing. I don't think anything arrives gift wrapped and ready to go. But I felt that we would do that, and that the audience who started with us would come with us and help us shape that by saying, wasn't too keen on that, liked that, whatever. And then, just as I say, things started to happen. And one of the reasons that I really wanted Scott to be involved in it, and he was nervous at the start because it wasn't something he was confident of, is that Scott and I in particular have very much a sense of humour that if one of us goes off somewhere on a joke, the other one kind of knows where he's going and will follow and will play off it. And I knew we wouldn't have to rehearse or come up with bits or anything like that. I knew it would just be quite natural, and we would just record it. But I knew it could get very self-indulgent, so straight away I set limits on things like if I say we're moving on, we're moving on, right? There's a reason behind it. Don't argue. It's not going to happen. And if I say no, we're not doing something, then no, we're not doing something. And although it's a wee bit dictatorial, it was because otherwise I didn't want to end up in a situation where we had maybe, because at the start we had 4 people, and again that was just based on the podcast I listened to. I always had 4 people, so I thought that was it. And eventually I realised that's too many, and it can go off on too many different directions at once, and it becomes a mess. It becomes hard for the listener to follow. And also another thing was about having somebody who was, if you like, the producer as well as, you know, one of the on-air people, was that I would say to people, I mean, you know this, if I put my hand up, finish, because, you know, we're moving on. And also, if you want to come in and you want to speak, don't talk over somebody, because it's one of the most unpleasant things you can hear is you're walking along with your headphones in and there are people arguing with each other and talking over the top of each other, and it's just, no matter what the content, no matter what they're saying, it's just an unpleasant noise. So from the start there was very much that case of, you know, I want you all to do this because I think you can contribute X or Y, or this is what I know you're good at, but it is going to be my baby, and for better or for worse, that's what it will be. And then if anyone who had done it, and it's never happened thankfully, but if anyone had done it and went, it's really not what I want it to be, I'm not going to do it anymore, that's cool. And it's why I say to people when they say that there's bits of it that they don't like, that's absolutely fine, you're entitled to that. But I think as soon as you start to do things by committee, you don't end up with something that someone really likes, you end up with something that everyone can live with, but that nobody actually really likes. And I think it's better to just have one person who says, this is what I'm going for, and then if you achieve it, great. And like I say, if the audience like it, fantastic. If they don't, I'll probably stop it. And that was another thing. When people make suggestions, again, I'll listen to them. Sometimes we take them up, sometimes we don't. But I'm never going to go out and say, what could we do, guys, that will get us more listeners? Because then you're not doing something truthfully, you're doing something for commercial reasons. And when you start to do that, you lose the essence of, I think, what made the show in the first place. So that's why when listeners come up with suggestions, you always consider them, unless they're moronic. But I'll always try and say, yeah, okay, yeah, we could work that in, or yeah, I take your point about that. But I don't ever want to do something where it becomes a focus group pod where everybody, I'm trying to juggle 42 different things that I personally might not believe in to try and attract as wide an audience as possible. It's a show, it is what it is, and people will either like it or they will not like it. And eventually there will come a time when more people don't like it than like it, and nobody's listening, and I'll stop doing it, and I'll have been glad about the run that we had. So that was the sort of thought processes.
And I think some key feedback, like, are you a Rangers fan, is quite up there, David.
I'm waiting on my letter from him.
Yes. And just to wrap up those early days, so in that first year or so, we were pretty successful. We won the title at Rugby Park. We led Celtic in the early days of Ali, before the wheels came off quite spectacularly. In that first year or so, how was the pod greeted by the audience, the public? How is it greeted by the club, and how is it greeted by the kind of mainstream media or gutter press?
I think in terms of an audience, it found one quite quickly, which and a decent sized one at that, which I was quite grateful for. Like, we were getting 10,000-12,000 people listening within the first few weeks, which now obviously it dwarfs that, but at the time it was a hell of a lot for a start-up with no publicity, and being arrogant, but not not being too arrogant and saying how wonderful I am, but just I had a little bit of a name based on the trust stuff, and that's not me being up myself. I'll be up myself later on. I'll take all the credit for stuff, but it was just people kind of went, oh, I know who he is, and I liked him on the trust. The other thing about it is that at the time, because you've still got people that are just discovering podcasts today, and it's still a market that hasn't in any way reached the saturation point yet. There's still more and more people who are finding this, and at the time, it was people who were kind of quite technologically minded, people who were quite sort of hipsterish, I suppose is the word, but I think we drew a kind of younger audience who were less traditional, and I say younger, I mean it could be anything up to like 40, but I just mean that it was people who were maybe more on a wavelength with the kind of stuff that we were doing, and also people who were kind of sick of the traditional media. So that was how it was received by them. How it was received by the club, well, at the time it was still David Murray and Martin Bain, and they still bridled at the mention of my name, kind of thing. So initially, I think, and there were people who worked at Ibrox who initially, I think, thought it was going to be a vehicle for me to, go out there and start settling old scores or saying libelous things or whatever. And I remember, though, that it never really occurred to me to have anything to do with the club, because I knew that I was persona non grata. So, but Playback, God love them, they, after a few weeks, said, we advertise with the clubs that we do the pod, so we'll go and ask them. I just laughed and said, go and ask them. And they came back and they said they can't take adverts for you because the podcast is too sectarian. And I love that phraseology, because I wondered, just what the acceptable level of sectarianism was. If we were too sectarian, what would have been just sectarian enough, or would we have been kicked off for being not sectarian enough? I mean, were the levels of it? But given that I knew there would be people listening to this who weren't fans of Rangers. Let's just say that there's a market out there of people who will listen to stuff looking to be offended. So there's nothing sectarian on it. There never has been, for the simple reason as a lot of people would try and get it shut down. So it was obviously bollocks by the club, but I love that it says a lot, doesn't it, about the kind of Murray regime, that was when something happened with fans they didn't like, that was their go-to position of, I'll chuck the word sectarian in there, which I think was a large part of the problem with their relationships with the fans. But we'll throw the sectarian bomb, and that they can't really come back on that. And what can you do? As for the press, the ones who were aware of it, again, maybe you're kind of younger, more open-minded people, and a lot of them were quite complimentary about it, even back then. I've got to say, and like for instance, at the time, through the trust, I'd appeared quite a few times on Off the Ball, and I remember Tam Cowan and Stuart Crosgrove both said, I really like your show, I'd be happy to appear on it. And I kind of thanked them, and I remember thinking, that's not what I want. I don't want journalists. I don't want, that's not what this is. People can get that elsewhere. So generally speaking, this was obviously before Cosgrove joined the ranks of full on Sevcoholics, but I didn't want it to be that. And Mark used to come at me and say things like, I can get an interview with this youth coach at Auchenhowie, and I'd be like, no, that's not what we want to do. And maybe now, moving forward and we've got more room, things like that can happen. But at the time, again, I had a very clear and very narrow vision of what the show should be, and that was it. But yeah, the media, those who were aware of it, I think were quite impressed by it, because I think there was a lot of guys who wanted to get their newspaper into things like podcasting, and I think that they maybe could then point to this as an example. But it flew under the radar. I mean, for the first, I'd say probably 2 or 3 years, it was a cult thing, and that just suited me fine, because we were able to just put it out every week without anybody really bothering us.
So the first year came and went, or the first year and a half came and went, and then the run up to and February 2012 happened, and then obviously got immeasurably worse in that the following summer. Did you think about using the pod at that time as a more political tool?
I I didn't want to join a cause because nobody knew what was going on. And I think that rather than me trying to, relive my days in the trust or get more involved, you need to remember that once I decided to stop doing that, there hasn't been a day that I wished I hadn't, and I've never wanted to go back into it. So I wanted to use the pod at that time to sort of try and put things into sense, firstly for myself and then for the listeners. And if you listen to the shows from back then, you'll hear a lot of confusion, you'll hear a lot of hope, you'll hear a lot of anger. I just wanted to reflect what we were all going through, and not to, if you like, pick a horse and then back that horse forever kind of thing. And it was always important for me to be just talking as a fan to other fans, and not to then suddenly say, well, I can use this to get back into being a fans rep or whatever you want to call it. I had no interest in that. And I did get approached by potential suitors at the time. You might remember that there were a few names in the frame, and they would say, can I come on your show? And I'd be, no, because there are enough con men floating around. I really don't want to be seen in any way to give a stamp to someone who might well turn out to be the devil. And if you listen to the pods at the time and we're honest about this, there are times where we say, well, welcome Craig White kind of thing, because they're snapshots of that week. So they're snapshots of what was happening. We, after a while, you begin to think, we began to obviously turn same as everybody else, similarly with Charles Green, similarly with the Sports Direct stuff, all that kind of stuff. But we didn't ever want to use it as a soapbox, other than just to say, we are Rangers fans and we are unhappy about this, you need to fix it, or this is pish. It's always just been, let's analyse what's happening this week. It's never been about trying to further the cause of any individual other than no individual, but anything other than just Rangers fans, and to say this is what Rangers fans are thinking, or this is what we are thinking, and we think we're representative of Rangers fans. And we're always taught, that's the other thing, remember, right from the start with the social media aspect, so people have always been able to get in touch with us. So I don't think that we are ever out of step, because even if we disagree, I think we'll say that and say, I know this isn't a popular opinion, but it's never been a case of us saying, you need to back this guy because we are telling you to. That's not something I'm remotely interested in.
I think during those dark days, David, I always found either doing the pod or listening to the pod quite it was almost like group therapy.
Yeah.
On a weekly basis, But I wonder, I was wondering, just jotting down some notes last night, through those dark days of 2012 to probably early 2015, did you ever think about just exposing any individuals in a kind of kamikaze, gung-ho, fuck it manner?
You have to be careful, because we are still governed by libel laws, and we are still governed by, you can't go on and accuse people of stuff if you don't know if it's true or not. It's as simple as that. And like everybody else, we had to, I know people sometimes get a bit frustrated that we might allude to something, and we don't do it often, but we might allude to something that we know or we've heard, and the reason we don't say it is because we've no proof, and we can't say it. So I could come on and say, well, Director X likes to do this with local escorts or whatever. There was obviously a rather famous spiv who had an account of that sort of thing. And again, I'm not even naming them because A, most of you will know, B, those of you who don't, ask about, they'll tell you, and C, you can't say stuff like that without any proof, because you will then be sued. And especially when people are in the institution and have the legal backing of the institute, or rather the legal power of the institution that they can then use against you, that it becomes very difficult to do that. But also, I think we strove to keep it light-hearted and within the moment. And when I say that, it makes it sound as though we were sitting making knock jokes rather than going through. We were going through the pain as well. And listen to those shows, you'll hear it. The first half of it, we always tried to end, with something funny or something upbeat for our own sanity as much as anything else. But we didn't ever, had we found out something, then yes, we would have used it, but we weren't digging, and we weren't we weren't going into going round finding things out or hiring PIs or anything like that. So a lot of the time, as stuff came out, we heard about it at the same time as everybody else, and that's I think why the pod worked, because this was just genuine reactions from genuine fans. It wasn't any kind of political point scoring. The reason the pod sounds heartbroken the week that we went into administration is because we were heartbroken.
So those were tough times. I don't particularly want to dwell on them too much, David, to be honest, because I do think those 3 years, it was more, it was replaying the news, it was talking about the news, it was almost therapy like.
It was a battle. I mean, it was to do them was a battle, because it was just this, you found yourself being piled under this sludge of absolute shite that was coming, and every day some embarrassing or horrific revelation was coming out about the club, and your motivation to go and talk about it is zip. And the two things that kept us going were, one, what you said, the kind of therapy aspect of it, and two, that people said, thank you for putting a smile on my face last week, or thank you for putting it into context for us. And that worked both ways, because while we were sitting working through it ourselves, we were getting that benefit too. If people kind of came away with it and said, well, I now have a kind of clearer understanding of it, we'd established that for ourselves between talking as a group to each other. So in that regard, that was what kept it going through that.
And I did feel, obviously the new world order arrived in kind of Q1, Q2 2015. I almost felt as if the pod went through a period of almost positive evolution following 3 years of therapy.
Yeah.
And obviously through then 2016 continued to grow. Club stabilised a bit from the shitstorm it had been in, and I think we entered 2017 just with almost reinvigorated and new initiatives, twice weekly pods, live shows that we've talked about for a while. It was almost the next evolution of Heart and Hand. What kind of scale of listeners are we talking about now, David?
We've moved up this year. We used to average about 80,000. We're probably now averaging about 100,000, and a really big week getting about 120,000. And obviously it depends what's happening and the game. So for obvious reasons, a home match against Hamilton isn't going to draw the same audience as an Old Firm match, for example, or a cup final or a big European game. So it can ebb and flow, but it consistently works out about six figures, and it's just staggering to me still. And it's growing year on year. We've never had a dip. We've never, if you were to see a chart of how it goes, it's pretty much a straight line up the way. And it tends not to spike either, which is interesting. But since this summer has probably been our fastest growth, I would say, just for putting on new listeners. And whether that's more visibility of the show, I don't know. But so those are the kind of figures that we're talking about.
And obviously we had the first interview special with Kevin Thompson.
Yeah, well, that was a huge one. I mean, that's the biggest show we've ever done. And I think because it picked up, it got press attention, because obviously of Kevin's, now fantastically infamous comments about Robbie Keane. And that I think then alerted people to it. And I know that listeners have told me that they'd maybe been on it, friends to listen for a while, and they sent them that, and from that they then got into the rest of it. And again, having spoke at the start about having a very narrow idea of what the show was to be, Like, I never wanted ex-players on it, and it was only when we moved to the second one, and that's a Playback Media. They get the credit for that, because they were on at me for about 2 or 3 years to do that. I mean, really, well, 2015 in particular, they started saying, come on, do a Friday show, do a preview show, and I was like, no, I'm not doing it, I don't have the time. And then, as I spoke about the pod on Friday, I did. I now do have the time, so I thought, okay, I'll give it a try and I'll see what happens. And then after a few weeks, I thought, well, we can't do a preview show this week, so what will I do? And I thought, I'll do an interview, see if that works, and contacted Kevin, and he did it. And that was an experiment, because had I done it and it was rubbish, and it turned out I wasn't very good at it at interviewing, because it wouldn't have been his fault, it would have been my fault. You've heard Kevin speak. He's incredibly articulate and interesting and funny guy with great stories to tell. So had that been a really rubbish episode, then I was crap at it, and it wouldn't have been worth continuing. And the likes of this tonight, even I would never have considered 2 years ago. A lot of that came from the Q&A, which people, again, that's a fan-led thing. That's entirely listener-led. They were the guys who came up with that. They said, why don't you do something like that? And loads of people had suggested over the years, why don't you do a Q&A? And I just didn't think there would be any interest in it. And then a friend of mine had a good point. He said, well, do it 1 week, because you get annoyed when podcasts you listen to take a week off. And he's right, I do. It's like, bastards, it affects my routine. He said, so that's kind of what it's like for people with you, so just do something. And I did the Q&A, and people liked it, and they do surprisingly well as well. They're kind of quite popular, the Q&A episodes. So just little things like that, and that's why when we moved to the subscription thing, one of the key things of that is that if listeners suggest shows to me, that again, unless they're David, why don't you record a show in the middle of a fountain naked, ideas, if they're sensible ideas, I can pretty much guarantee we'll try it at least once to see if it works or not. And even then, even if it doesn't work, there might be parts of it that we can like reuse or adapt or change. So those kind of things, as I say, came along at the right time for me personally, and also at a good time in terms of people discovering the concept of podcasts. Like I say, every year more and more people who maybe haven't had a history of listening to podcasts or weren't really aware of them, are, because it's becoming more easy. Obviously, I mean, even up to a couple of years ago, to download a podcast, you had to turn on your laptop, download it to iTunes, fire it into your phone. There was a process. It was a pain in the arse, as opposed to now where you just go to the app and boom, there it is. So because of that, we're getting more listeners. More listeners bring new ideas. They bring kind of if you like, new focuses to it. And also, while I'd been quite comfortable doing it my way, I had got too comfortable doing it my way. And when I would have a new idea, because I was busy, because I'd worked and everything and was working full time, that I just wouldn't have time to explore it. Whereas I had time to set up the Kevin Thompson interview, I've got time to prepare for the Q&A pods, I've got time to push the subscription service forward, I've got time to do all of this. So that's that kind of was what sparked the change. And the guys at Playback are always really supportive, and they're always full of ideas, but they also never they understand that it's my baby, and they never insist on things. But I do try to accommodate them because they're so good with us. So having them as a partner is a real help, and because of that I then also I can tell from them things that work in their kind of podcast empire, for want of a better word, that well, this show tried this and it's worked quite well, and I'll go, okay, that sounds good. But then there's other things that they'll say, well, this worked well for us, and I say, might work well for that support. It's not going to work for the Rangers support. Trust me, I know them. I am one of them, and because of that, I'm able to kind of make a value call on whether or not it's worth pursuing or not. But I think that in the main, the freedom that we've got is a huge part of it. And now, having, if you like, almost sort of taking the blinkers off of what the show can be. I'm really excited by the amount of possibilities now that I can say, well, yeah, why not? And I think that for years of just saying, we're good at this, we're going to stay in our lane, people like this is what we'll do, that I think now I'm confident enough in the show and myself, and if you like, in the relationship that we've built up with the listeners and the trust that they have in us, that I don't mind experimenting a bit more. And like I say, some of them, tell you this right now, some of them won't work, some of them will be absolute disasters. And that's cool now, because I think the audience will go, one of the things I love about Rangers fans and Scottish people in particular, but it's to go, that's fucking terrible, Davey, but looking forward to the next one, and that gives you, if you like, almost that free pass to go and try new things.
And I guess with that natural evolution and growth this year and more time to do it, it's not exactly been a year short on topics, from Warburton to Kushinya to the SPFL announcement in July, which was a hoot, to Kevin Thompson, to preview shows. What's been the best response to a pod that you've done, or even just one that sticks in the mind? And conversely, what's been the worst reaction you've had?
We've never had an awful reaction, as in, people kind of up in arms and angry at us. You always, almost every episode, you will get people who will say, I disagree with this, but that's cool, you're talking about something that people care a lot about, that you can have myriad opinions on. So of course certain people are going to disagree with you, and that's absolutely fine. All I'd say is, if you listen to the pod every week and you disagree every week, then probably it's not on your wavelength, and it's probably not worth listening to anymore. That I don't understand when people listen and then complain every week. It's like, mate, you're not going to enjoy this. Don't listen to it. The best reactions I can remember, after the league win, the first one of the new season after administration, because I think we started it with a quite fuck you attitude. And interestingly, that summer I went to play back and I said, look, we're a third division club now. Are you interested in continuing this? And they say, well, of course, you're Rangers, don't be stupid. Like your fans are going to disappear. And doesn't that tell you something about the Rangers support? We'd been put into Division 3 and everybody knew our fans were going to stick around. So there was one we did after Mike Ashley, when he won the first sort of AGM, when the good guys lost the first AGM, that I think was very sombre but very measured. And I think people reacted well to it, although I wouldn't say enjoyed is the right word, because it was such a sad time and a sad period. But I think that they appreciated the content and the effort that we'd put in to try and at least contextualise it. And then, as I say, the Q&A ones are usually I usually very touchingly, personally, get a good response to. And in fact, the one we did last week, shameless plug, although if this is your first episode of Heart and Hand, I wouldn't. This is not typical. There are other, there are funnier ones, but the reaction to the one that I did last week, I think, because again, you develop a relationship with the listeners, and I think that they begin to get to know us, the podders, almost as people. And the questions last week, some of them were a bit more about me and a bit more personal, and at first I would never have entertained answering them. Those would have been ones that I would have left out, but I thought, no, you know what, these people are kind enough to give me their time of twice a week. I think I owe them at least that. And as I mentioned on that show, the one thing about this pod is that it's always honest. Everyone who's on it is honest. If I thought for a second that someone was grandstanding, was saying things to be popular, was saying things to be unpopular, they might get a kick out of that, kind of Sutton-esque, if you like, or was playing a role like, I'm going to be the Heart and Hand cartoon villain, I'm going to be the Heart and Hand really good guy, they wouldn't be back on it. That would better be done, because I think the audience would smell inauthenticity in a second, and then we're dead if that happens. And I personally, you wouldn't want to be involved in a pod like that. And again, it comes back to the things where if we ever start doing things that are, instead of just let's talk about this and hope it's a good show, if we start going, what can we do to top that, then we're fucked. Because that's when you start to, as I say, get desperate and do stupid things and become a parody of yourselves. And I will end the show before that happens.
One of the key founding principles that you talked about, David, is effectively we're all mates. We're basically just guys chatting in some kind of cyber pub with Pepsi for you and I. And that's always been the case. And I think what's interesting is we're a bunch of mates chatting that have all got different backgrounds, different beliefs, different politics, etc., etc. There's almost a kind of a difference of opinion all the way through. Might end up agreeing, but that's just the way it goes. In terms of that editorial piece, you talked earlier about there's not masses of planning. We just talk. I think no real parameters apart from the ones you mentioned. Maybe don't swear too much unless it's morbid and getting entered, or not quite sectarian enough, or not quite racist enough, or whatever.
Yeah, there are certain words that you're not allowed to say. Any new podder on this is informed before they begin. There are certain words that are going to get us shut down, so yes, we steer clear of those.
But in terms of actually editing the pod, I'm assuming that there's not much to do once it's recorded.
Less and less the longer it goes, yeah. Because everyone is comfortable at it. Like at the start, things would break down, or I wouldn't be happy with a particular bit of the show, or I would feel that somebody had rambled on, Mark, and was uninterruptible, Mark. And I would just start and say, no, that's not going in, we're not doing that, or, what are you talking about? So back then, yeah, I mean, the first couple of years, but after that, everybody sort of learned, if you like, because I knew what I wanted, and then after a while, everybody, I think, sort of realised I would never cut something out because somebody disagreed with me. I mean, that's that would be idiotic. I'd be as well doing the show on my own if I wanted to do that. But it would generally just be that someone starts warbling on about something unrelated, or I think a lot of it comes from in the workplaces that I've been in, where you have meetings. I'm sure a lot of listeners can empathise with this, where you have meetings and there's maybe 10 people there, and 2 or 3 of them start a conversation that excludes the other 7, and you're sitting there like a fanny waiting for these people to finish. That was, if there were times on the pod when people would maybe get into something that wasn't relevant to the overall show, then take it out, kind of thing. And yeah, there are times that some of the podders might want to go off on. So, and like I say, I keep coming back to that, narrow parameters. So if somebody wants to come on and start talking about politics, and I mean other than maybe just a general thing or a joke, like the independence referendum would be a good. We pretty much avoided that. I think you would know, listening to the pod, how we all felt about it, but we didn't use it as a soapbox. I was pretty determined about that because it was everywhere at that point, and I thought the last thing that the listeners need is us starting that. So yeah, there's a lot less editing now. Generally, it might just be things like somebody's mic's not working, there's noise. In my case, the dogs start barking. It really is just as dull and mechanical as that. But in terms of the actual content, very rarely now do I have to make significant cuts to the show. As I say, it's more just mechanical things.
And Playback Media, they've been on the journey since pretty much since outset.
Yeah.
You talked about them earlier, and how supportive are they? Do they want any editorial content? And also, the thing that always amuses me is how much noise do they get from interested listeners that don't support Rangers?
Loads, especially at the start, and I think over the years that the listeners have twigged that when they email Playback Media to complain about me, Playback forward it to me to deal with, and I don't give a fuck. So I think they realised after a while that it was kind of pointless to do that. They've been great, they've been always really supportive with us. They've never have come and said, you need to take that out, you need to get rid of that, or we've listened to the show, we can't have this, we can't have that. Again, right at the start, we agreed certain things, that it wasn't going to be like, Mason Boyncute, it wasn't going to be that sort of show. And other than that, they've just let me run with it. At the start, as I say, they maybe kind of say, well, we've got, if you like, a house style, and I said, well, I want to change this or that about it, and even at that, they were really, really cool. So they've never interfered with it, and they've always been quite supportive of anything that I've needed, and they've always had our back. And I mean, there was a recent example of that, and they had our back with things like that. But when they get noise from other people, I don't think it particularly bothers them too much, because they get, they run an Arsenal and a Spurs pod, for example, and those two pods are not exactly complimentary about the other one. They run a Chelsea pod that Phil Daniels is on quite a lot, and again, they get a lot of feedback on that, and I think they understand that they're very internet savvy. The guys who run it, and I think that they understand that on the internet, and particularly, obviously only on social media, that you get a lot of people who are going out of their way to be offended. So I think if I ever crossed the line, that they would pull me up on it, and I think that's cool, because you need that in place. But so far they haven't.
And how are they on the the advertising front? I mean, I guess I do. I subscribe to a good few pods myself, David, and some of them you tend to get adverts kind of rammed down your throat. How are Playback Media with that?
They handle the adverts. So I remember the infamous Flappy Wabbit one. That was nothing to do with me. Catherine Ryan, that's nothing to do with me. If you're fed up with those adverts, you want a more local one, then get in touch with me, and I'll do you an ad and I'll put it in the body of the show, kind of thing. But the adverts tend to be there, those guys sort that out, and that's good, because it's not an area that I'd be that interested in dealing with. And also, unless you're going to pay us stupid amounts of money, and you're not going to get any editorial control. So we had an incident earlier this season when there was a belief, if you like, from an outside company that they could have an editorial say in what went into the show, and they don't. And I'll do it myself and shut it down and just put it out on YouTube before I start letting people say, you need to apologise for this, you need to apologise for that. That's never going to happen. I think that if you want to be involved in the programme, then you should know what the programme is by this stage, and that there will be things in the show that offend people, because they're designed to offend people. If I say something offensive about Celtic, it's because I want to be offensive about Celtic. If I say something offensive about Aberdeen, it's because I want to be offensive about Aberdeen. If I say something that's illegally offensive about, a group of people based on race, religion, colour or creed, then that's different, and report me to the cops. But, because the nasty man was nasty about your football club, why don't you just go and fuck yourself, would be my message. And I think that for any organisations that want to be involved in the pod and say, well, we've got a wide customer base and we can't be let anyone be offended. It's like, well, it's not going to work. And at the end of the day, I again would shut the pod down before I would apologise to Celtic supporters, for example, about the content of the show. I would genuinely just say thanks, we've had a good run, and shut it down. So yeah, but again, like I say, in terms of support from Playback at any point where anything like that's reared its head, it's been brilliant. But if you don't like the scheduling of the adverts, that's out of my control. I am walking away and pleading the fifth on that one.
And I think in terms of that go fuck yourself attitude, I think that's something that all the podders have had since day one, to be honest, Dave.
Yeah, and so you should, because if I invited you on this and I told you what you couldn't say, you wouldn't do it. So it works that way with the pod as a whole. If I told you or Mark or Scott, I disagree with that, so you can't say it. You would go, well, fuck you, and you wouldn't do it. So I can't. I think it's only fair that the whole show operates in that manner.
So moving on, we finally in April did the first live pod. I think we started talking about it maybe 2014 or something like that.
Earlier, 2013.
2013, and we finally got there. Talk to us, David, about your feeling. So we announced it, and I think we all agreed to do it. And then me personally, I boxed it off and humped it to the back of my brain, probably until a week and a half or so until it was actually going to happen. And then I'll freely admit, personally, I was shiting myself on the night and got pissed. So tell me about your feelings on the run up and even just from the tickets went out. What was the journey like for you?
The idea to do it, people had asked almost from the start, when you're doing a live pod, and Playback started saying to us, you should do a live pod. Not we want, but just, David, you should do a live pod. People like them. We do them with Spurs. The Spurs do ones, every month. The Spurs show. And they were like, you should do these, they're a lot of fun, you'll enjoy it. But then about 2 or 3 years in, I mentioned this in the show the other week, that the process to record it was becoming so laborious and time consuming that we needed new equipment. And I did a Kickstarter campaign for it, and the audience in the first of, I always underrate our audience, and I apologise to you all for that, because I can't get my head round that what is essentially me sitting talking to my mates matters to anybody. But with the Kickstarter, I set this target, literally just enough to buy the stuff we needed, and we beat it. And one of the things I'd said in it was, if we hit this, we'll do a live pod. And I kept meaning to, and then just for the first couple of months after it, we just couldn't. And then job was so busy and whatnot. Then one of the podders had a situation where a close relative was very, very ill, and he had to almost become a carer for a while. So that kind of put it in the back burner. Then I got ill, and I was seriously ill, and I for 3 months didn't even do the pod. Couldn't do the pod. So there was always something. And again, I'll say that for our audience, they never bitched about it. They never ever said, you bastard, or got the fraud squad in, you promised us this, and we donated, and you did. But it was always in my mind that I am going to do this for them. But obviously, I mean, me, I don't like social situations, and it's the ex-drinker thing that it's just not fun for me being in a pub. Not because I think I can't walk into a pub or I can't walk into a social event because I think I'm going to take a drink. I mean, it's a long time since I had a drink, and it's not a consideration. But I just don't enjoy it. I feel awkward, and it wasn't something I was particularly looking forward to. But it was owed. So literally the first day after I stopped working, I thought, I'm going to organise this, and I did. And the Loudon Tavern, who were magnificent and are just so good to us, I cannot say enough about them. I honestly can't. They're just wonderful to us. And arranged it, and I put the pause out, and you'll remember this. I said, right lads, I'm doing, here's this live show. We've got X amount of tickets that we need to keep. I think it's 30 that we had to keep back for people who had contributed to a certain amount to the Kickstarter. And we're going to do this live show at the Loud, and then that's it, done. And then I don't need to feel guilty anymore. And we've honoured our commitment. Better late than never really occurs or really fits this situation. And we said, right, okay, how many tickets does that leave us? And it was, I think, 170. And I said, right, okay, well, listen, we've got 6 weeks to... That's actually why it was scheduled for 6 weeks after that date, because I said, right, we've got 6 weeks, so that's 6 shows where we can hammer these tickets and just, really try and push, and we'll see if we can get these tickets sold. With the idea being that if I can get over 100, the pub says it's worth doing. Under that, then they might take a loss, and we can't have them doing that. But let's see if we can push it. And we put them out on a Friday night without having mentioned it on the pod, because I just put them out straight away without thinking, because I thought I'll mention this in the pod on Monday and then we'll start the push. And they sold it that night. It's like 5.5 hours, and we couldn't believe it. I was remember texting you guys, just saying 50% of tickets gone, 60%. We're all high as a kite. We couldn't believe it. Coming to the show itself, yep. I wasn't nervous because the one thing I'm good at is I think that I give good David. Do you know what I mean? I think if I get put into a situation where there's pressure, the natural show off in me comes out, and I'm good with it. But I know, you say you're shitting yourself on the night. Cammy was horrendous the week before. What are we talking about? What's the agenda? What we're going to do? What we're going to say? And I'm probably, if you like, in inverted commas, the worst boss you could have in that situation, because I'm just going, we'll be fine, don't worry about it. And he's going, no, but what we're going to say, what we're going to talk about, what we're going to do. And I'm going, we'll work it out, it'll be cool, don't worry, we're just going to do it. Because I'm me, mate, punk rock, head down, arse up, and get on with it. I'm not a great one for planning or rehearsing sort of thing. We did it, and it went well, and people seemed to enjoy it, and that was it. Wasn't doing it again, because, as I say, I'd wanted to get one done, and it was done, and we'd honoured our commitment, and we were finished, and that was it. And then people started saying, I really enjoyed it, will you do another one? No. And people started saying, I couldn't go to it, will you do another one? No. And then after a wee while, I was like, you're being a bit of a dick here. So I said, okay, we'll do a second one, thinking it's probably too early, but we'll just do it, and then I don't need to do it again. Right? And this time the tickets went in 34 minutes. Again, because I really, really didn't think this one would sell it. I could not get my head around that, because it was so soon after the last one.
And I can absolutely validate that. I mean, you were texting the night before going, I don't even know why we're doing this. It won't sell out. No, and of course, myself and Scott and Cammy are almost looking at each other through text messages going, the fuck are you on about? Of course it'll sell out.
No, I just couldn't believe it. Again, I underrate the audience sometimes. I underrate the level of support for us, and I shouldn't, because, as I say, time after time after time they come through for us. But I'm like, okay, we'll put these up. And again, didn't mention it on the show, because, again, thought we're going to really need to work to move it. I mean, I was actually saying to you guys, remember, how many family members can you bring? Because if there's 5 of us and we can all bring like 20, then that'll at least get us to the breaking point. And they sold it in 34 minutes. So with the third one, it was just, I thought, well, there's obviously a demand for this. So, but again, to try and freshen it up a little, we booked Kevin Thompson, and we got Kevin to come along. And we did mention that on the podcast this time that tickets will be available, and they sold it in 2 minutes and 24 seconds, and I could not believe it. And now on top of you guys going, we should book somewhere bigger, and I have Kevin Thompson going, Davey, we should book somewhere bigger. But of course, me being, shall we say, a cautious driver, I'm like, I don't know, we'll see. But we're going to do more in the new year, because I know loads of people did miss out on tickets for this and are unhappy, and I absolutely understand that. There's nothing worse. So my suspicion is that if you haven't had a ticket before, then obviously with each one, the people who've been before don't want to come, and therefore we will get to a certain level. But we're had offers, as you'll know. I mean, you brought one of them to the table to do them elsewhere, and again, it's, if you want me to do something, always remember my first response will be no. I automatically say no to stuff, and the best thing to do is to just let the seed grow and then mention it to me occasionally. Don't over push, because then I'll definitely, my back will go up and I'll say no. But if you go, well, have you thought, but it's still worth doing, mate, and that is starting to take hold. So if anybody's out there and you have a hall you can set us up with, and you think we can fill it, then let me know, and it's something that I would think about. But again, I don't really. It's the same with this one, and again, people are saying, what are you going to do at this? And I'm like, I've got a vague idea. I'll know on the night. I haven't yet stood in front of a crowd with a microphone and dried up. When that happens, I'll probably begin to think we need a bit more planning. But it also means that we don't repeat spots. We don't come up with something popular and do it again, which is good, because for one thing I wouldn't remember it, but it means that you don't do an act, and I don't want it to be a show where it becomes like like going to see a comedian, which there's nothing wrong with, but that you go and it's the same thing every time. That's not what we're going to do. Although I do promise for those you come to live one that there is one particular line I will get Kevin to say.
And there's always going to be a Mark Dingwall story in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
All I'd say to wrap up the live pod, but David, is San Diego Loyal more than happy. Just make that offer.
yeah. Flies out there and we'd be more than happy. Absolutely.
So, we're what, about an hour in, David. So this year has seen, for me, just remarkable growth. We've had, and coinciding with clearly your positive personal situation, with the onset of the YouTube channel, after match content, including the other week, pretty much from the ground. The odd Periscope live if something breaking happens. 2 pods a week, flagship show and the extra show. We've had live pods, and for me, it's just kind of consciously charging ahead, branching out and grasping new age social media. And there's that realization for me that people, by and large, and that includes people who are new to the pods, and we're seeing it every single week, we're getting new people. People, by and large, don't want to listen to ill-informed, paid, agenda-driven hacks, basically.
Yeah.
That's my view of this year.
Well, I don't. Personally, and that's why I listen to podcasts of clubs and whatnot rather than the media, because I don't personally, so I can totally understand where people are coming from.
So with that in mind, how's this year been for you? Just in general terms of what I see as being the huge growth of the pod.
It's been really exciting because it's obviously pleasant that people are enjoying what we do. But one of the things about not wanting to do 2 pods before was, we'll just end up repeating what we're doing, and we'll just end up diluting the content of the pod. And I always think it's better to do less than more. For years the pod was 35 to 40 minutes because that was the received wisdom. That's what they, if you read any book on podcasting, they will tell you 35 to 40 minutes is the optimum length. Do not go above that. But the audience said, actually, we'd really rather you did and do it a bit longer. So we started to do that. And then by making the Friday show different, but that meant having to get in different contributors and having to get in more people. And again, the golden rule, if you want to be on the show, you have to be a mate of mine. It's stuck, and it's still people, because otherwise it's not going to sound like a conversation between 2 mates, because we're not mates. With the exception of ex-Rangers players, obviously, I will make exceptions for. But again, we wouldn't have them on this show. They wouldn't be on the Monday show. I would do interviews or do special things with them, but I wouldn't do special things with them. That sounds a bit kinky. Certain ones of them I would, actually. If Brian Loudroup's
let Scott do that, I suppose.
Exactly. I've always got Scott for that kind of thing. So yeah, and it's just about then putting ideas into place. Like we had a YouTube show last week that was starting called Scott's Thoughts, and that's Scott's got the ball with that one. It's just, what do you want to do? And last week he wanted to talk about the Asian Champions League, and I've not something I'm particularly well versed in, but it's something he wanted to talk about, and I know that anything he wants to do in that show, by all means, I'd more than happy to let him go and do it. It's the same with all you guys. If you come to me and say, I'd like to do this, and we'll give it a try. And that's what the subscription service is for as well, because we're going to have content that's different. We're going to, you know, as I say, people with individual ideas, we're going to have a daily news update that will just be, you don't need to go to Radio Clyde or Radio Scotland, you can get your news from us with a little bit of analysis that you know is coming from people who are Rangers supporters, where you're not going to get, you know, the Monday after a win at Partick Thistle, you're not going to get on our daily news guys going, did we over-celebrate, you know, a pish like that. We're going to talk about stuff that's actually relevant to being a Rangers fan. But you'll get things like, you know, discussing, you and I are talking about a thing already where we're going to discuss Advocaat's first year at Ibrox, but we'll break it down almost month by month. I said to you, I was like, that's going to be a 3 or 4 parter. There's no way we could do that in 1 hour. You know, that's going to be a longer show, but I think that'd be interesting. It's the kind of thing I'd like to listen to, and we'll do that for various things, or player profiles, or you know, guys can phone in and phone-ins. That's something I know a lot of our supporters miss, being able to take part in phone-ins, but clearly don't want to talk to the kind of people who are on phone-ins at the moment and know the way they'll be treated because they're Rangers fans. So, you know, we'll be doing live phone-ins maybe after the match, maybe one in midweek or whatever, Q&A sessions with certain podders, interviews with ex-players, all of that kind of stuff. You know, with Ian McCall on from the Founders Trail, and I mean, Ian, I think, just barely scratched the surface of the stuff that he does, so we'll have him on to talk about, you know, his research and the gallant pioneers in the club. We'll get guys who are experts on 20s, 30s, 40s Rangers. You know, we'll have guys who watched in the 60s. I'll go and speak to people who have got stories to tell that I think are of use or of interest to the Rangers family, and become, if you like, a more complete service. But still at the heart of it will be the flagship Monday show, which will still be us talking nonsense, having a laugh, discussing what's been going on. That's the plan. And I know for those of you who are missing, for example, Scott's Scott's Sporting Integrity Award, you know, that we'll have a show that's just Scott's Sporting Integrity Award, because that way with the subscription service, if you don't want to listen to it, you don't have to, but if you do, it's there, and it'll give you those opportunities. So yeah, at the moment with so many ideas, and now I've got the time, the more successful the subscription service gets, the more resources I'll have to put back into it, because financially I'm doing all right in life, and it's not to make a fortune, it's that I'm doing all right so long as I'm careful with my money, and that's why I'm not working. But I don't really have a lot in terms of investing in the show. Whereas with this, it's kind of like the money that comes in will almost go straight back out, but into producing more and more content, and better content, and better sounding content, richer sounding content, speaking to people where it may cost us some money, be it for to get them or to travel to them or whatever. Then the next stage is you start to get better video equipment, and we can start to make videos, and there's just so many opportunities. And again, this is where if people come to us and say, with the subscription service, people come to us and say, I've got an idea for a show, great, go ahead, make it, come on, and we'll give you a home, we'll give you an audience to kick it off. And it may be that people come on and do a podcast that takes off, and they go off and leave us and do their own thing, and that would be brilliant. That would be fun. I would love that if someone maybe started on our network and then was able to take advantage of the kind of inbuilt listener base we have to launch their own thing and then go off and do it totally independently. I would love that. That would be outstanding. So those are the plans, and I honestly do think, I know it sounds a wee bit marketing speak here, but 2018, I think that certainly if you're a fan of Heart and Hand, then I really think you're going to enjoy what we've got coming up.
So exciting. And I'll freely admit, David, I'm on the pod from time to time. I'm really excited about it. I like the change in the content. I actually quite like the extra show, the preview show. I get to talk about the Partick Thistle centre forward and why he's a wee prick and all this kind of stuff. I quite like that, so hopefully the listeners do. But I think that's the key for it. It shows for the listeners. So yeah, that's a challenge. That's a challenge for the listeners. Keep telling us what you want to hear.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Again, there will always be with this one decision maker, and like I say, for better or for worse, for right or for wrong, it's me. And that's not me being a prick. If you know, or any of the podders came to me with an idea, I'd be happy to, you know, listen to it and push it forward. But it still has to fit in with what I want, what my vision is for the show, or for, you know, the whole brand, for want of a better word. And I think that's cool, because it will keep us from, if you like, going off in too many directions and try to be all things to all people, because we can't be, we won't be. But we can provide content that, the best way to describe it is, I think we've got a lot of potential for a wide range of stuff in a very narrow genre, would be how I would describe it. So, like, when people say to me, you've got wide musical taste, it's pretty much all guitar based. So, I mean, yes, it's like, you know, I like Metallica all the way through to kind of like really fey pop music, do you know what I mean? Like Sarah Records. But it's still all essentially guitar music. It's not like I'm a big fan of funk or soul or whatever, or rap or whatever. So it's a wide range in a narrow genre, and I think that's what Heart and Hand will be. They'll be fan-created, fan-led, fan-based pods for fans, and content for fans, and that's what people, I think, can expect from us.
So, David, I think we'll can it there. Thanks for your time. It's been interesting for me. I hope it's been interesting for you.
I'm knackered. I'm not. I don't like this. You know?
I'll freely admit you can do the hosting next time. Yeah. But guys, listeners, if you want to get in contact, David is at Ibrox Rocks. You can get in touch on the Facebook. Just search for Heart and Hand, and you can find me in Twitter sphere at Vanderhog. All that remains is to thank our executive producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, to say we are the people, and we'll speak to you soon.